Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that's guaranteed to rustle some jimmies, that's guaranteed to get a few of you very much upset at me in the comment section, of which I'm entirely okay with, to be honest with you, because it does need to be talked about. So what we're learning about is that the future of Warner Brothers Discovery, which seems to be having a bit of an uptick financially, does somewhat rest on the shoulders of James Gunn's upcoming Superman movie. It will, in fact, decide the fate. It is the linchpin of the entire organization. And we're learning about this coming in from Puck News, where there's a whole article here about Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca about whether or not they're going to survive the gauntlet of running everything over there at Warner Brothers Discovery. But all of their follies aside, or folly ado aside, if you will, we are going to be talking about James Gunn's Superman and the fact that the future of the company is relying on it, as I was pointing out. And this is something that not a lot of people really want to look at from the perspective of realism. All right. If you go on social media, it's really just people that are ball gagging on Superman. Oh my God, it looks so good. It looks okay. Okay. It looks okay. It doesn't look great. It looks okay. That was the first teaser that we saw to give us kind of an overview of the world. And it was kind of flat, color palette wise, kind of flat, kind of, I don't want to say lifeless. It's from the same cinematographer as The Flash, who also worked with James Gunn on Guardians 2, Guardians 3, The Suicide Squad. Yet for some reason, those movies, at least on their teasers, had a much better visual palette, a much more aesthetically pleasing look. Whereas this one just kind of feels like it's really laying in or leaning into what could be considered a lower budget, even though it doesn't, which makes me really question if this is one of those situations where James Gunn has found himself massively underwater, like he's just in over his head in ways that can, we don't know yet what's going to happen. And anything could happen. Anything could happen at all. I've talked about the fact that this movie opens up sandwiched, if you will, in between Jurassic World, Rebirth, and Fantastic Four. Jurassic World is going to make a lot of money. It's opening up right before a holiday weekend. The end of the month is going to be Fantastic Four. What we have to remember here, and we have to remember this, is right now we are in a different space, somewhat, what's the word I want to use here? We're in a bit of a different space in regards to, let's say, the potentiality of a recession. There are fears of that happening right now. There's a lot going on with the stock market. There's a lot of uncertainty in the American economy, especially in this new administration. Will that have something to do with the summer box office? If that's the case, yes, it will. Eggs are up. And when eggs go up, people tighten their belt on other things. And that might mean that movies are going to feel the hit. Mickey 17 definitely kind of failed to reach the goals that they wanted it to. But at the same time, I have a lot of opinions about how movie pundits, not so much the marketing, movie pundits negatively impact box office by only reporting on the negative because they love train wrecks. And you might make the argument, well, aren't you doing the same thing in regards to Superman? The reality of it is it's a yes and no sort of thing. And I'll acknowledge that. I'll absolutely acknowledge that. The reason why I'm going to go with no is because I'm trying to set people up for reality, not attack the film. I don't know if it's good or bad. I hope it's good. I've said this multiple times. I have never once said I hope it isn't good or that it doesn't look okay. I am hopeful that James Gunn knocks it out of the park. I've been a very big supporter of James Gunn for a very long time. I was one of the few people in the summer of 2018 when he got busted for all those bad tweets that came out to defend him, and I got run through the mud quite a bit for that. So you know what? It's I don't want to hear none of this nonsense. What I'm talking about here is from the character perspective of Superman. You can look at this financially. Just okay, before we even dive into everything involving this movie, let's just quickly take a step back and take a look at what we know about theatrically how Superman has done. 1989 to 2006. Okay, that's a long time. That's 17 years between Superman movies. 17 years. In that time, we had, if you count 1989 as being the first year of Batman and the last year of Superman, we had 5 Batman movies, not including Mask of the Phantasm and I believe Return of the Joker. Mask of the Phantasm went to theaters. I think Return of the Joker was home video, so that negate that one. But you had 5 or 6 theatrical Batman movies, and no no Superman movies outside of one, the original, or number 4 from 1989, which Quest for Peace was, okay, it is what it is. So Batman had the animated series. So did Superman. But Batman set the tone for theatrical Warner Brothers. It just did. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you guys. It just did. And that's kind of where we've been. Okay, so 2006, Superman Returns comes along, and it grosses $391 million on a massive budget that ultimately wasn't entirely its fault, because you had like other Superman movies like Superman Flyby that had all of its development costs that were kind of like bundled in with that budget. So that part sucks. And I'm sure Batman Begins had something very similar with the Darren Aronofsky Batman Year One that he was working on before it went to Batman Begins in Nolan. But anyway, then a couple years later, right? So you had Batman Begins in 2005, Superman Returns in 2006, no Superman Returns follow-up, but we get The Dark Knight, a movie that, did over $1 billion, did $1 billion, I think, in $9 million. And then 4 years after that, you had The Dark Knight Rises, which did $1.14 billion. And then after that, you had, Man of Steel, which did $671 million. And so you could make the argument that, like, yeah, okay, on the, these movies have gone up in value, I guess, but we still don't have a lot of examples of modern day Superman. And the fact that Superman as a movie is coming up on 47 years, nearly a half century. The climate has changed and people aren't interested as much into that, which is one of the reasons why my personal belief is that it's entirely stupid to put the future of the DCU on Superman's shoulders, when financially speaking, which is what is going to be what happens, what gauges the future of this, clearly resides on Batman's shoulders. Okay, it does. You got the video games. You had Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight, Arkham Origins, all massive games. Rocksteady's last one, Suicide Squad, killed the Justice League. No one liked it. So what are they doing? What's Rocksteady doing? They're going back to Batman. Okay, you had the Wonder Woman game that unfortunately got canceled. I really wanted to play it. Monolith, may they rest in peace. Okay, but they got rid of that too. There's no Superman game on the horizon, because if you can't make the character a nearly invulnerable character outside of magic and a radiated rock from his home planet, it's very difficult to sell it as a narrative that is going to get people to check it out and to vibe with it. I'm sorry, I keep saying this, but the comic fans don't understand the rest of the world. They live in a bubble. It's just, at this point, they live in a bubble, and I feel really bad for them, because it's like, you try to explain this to them using numbers, and they're very much like conservatives when talking about reality. It's always well, my feelings say otherwise. Okay, fine. Whatever. If you want to live in that bubble, you live in that bubble. I cannot help you. But what I can do is do everything in my power to try to discuss what potentially could happen given everything surrounding the movie. Okay, and why I've been saying this forever, and even the puck is basically backing it up. I kept saying that Superman is going to end up being that movie that ends up just being like, that is the linchpin, right? That is going to make or break the DCU. And the whole thing's a glorified cameo fest. Okay, James Gunn is trying to downplay that by saying that these are character moments, that they are establishing the DCU, that they are trying to build it up from there. I mean, we're going to get the Lanterns, we're going to get Hawkgirl, we're going to get probably Lobo will have a post-credit appearance. Supergirl will probably be in the movie in some point. You got Crypto, the dipshit dog. All right, you got all these. It's just, where is Clark and Lois? That should be the primary focus of the movie. Should be the relationship between Clark, Lois, and of course Superman, because that's going to be the other big catalyst in there. But obviously they want to turn this into something that's going to be able to branch out. They're trying to do, once again, what MCU has done, but not take the time to get there. And we said this back in 2013 when Man of Steel came out, and it was really well received and it made a lot of money. And then just like the next month at Comic-Con, what does Warner Brothers do? They bring out Ben Affleck, announce that he's Batman, and they go Batman v Superman. And everyone's like, wait, you guys are jumping right to the Avengers, basically? Okay, Marvel took their time to get there. You guys are just kind of running right at it. And what happened? Failure at the leadership at Warner Brothers bogged down BVS and ultimately cost it the $1 billion it should have made. And then what they do, same thing with Justice League. We got the superior movie years later. Thank you, Jason Kilar. Can we get ones in the chat for Jason Kilar having done a lot for Zack Snyder and had done a lot for that version of the franchise? But he never gets the love of certain people because they're just effing psychotic at this particular point. So let's talk about why Superman is critical to Warner Brothers' future based upon this article in Puck News. And again, Puck does have a lot of deep-seated resources. Obviously, there was that Kathleen Kennedy thing from just the other day where a lot of people, they tried to downplay what he had said, but they also never really denied what he said. So, it is what it is. Here we go. Right now, Superman is the first film in the DC Universe reboot. We know this. Okay, this is the proving ground. This has to be the proving ground. This is whether or not James Gunn, it's not even DC can compete with Marvel. It's whether or not the prodigal son returns and can compete with the father. Okay, can Jesus take out God? That becomes the ultimate question. All right, and again, I'm being hyperbolic, but it's kind of like that. Warner Brothers needs to also show its investors that its massive DC IPs still hold value. And that's a big thing right now because, again, the cancellation of the Wonder Woman game, the failure of Joker Folie à Deux, which was which was something that should have never happened. But, you've got the Suicide Squad and the Justice League, that game crash and burn. Right? It's like you've got some of the Batman VR stuff, which is pretty cool, but that's VR and that's still very niche and it hasn't gone widestream yet. Or mainstream yet. So you've got that particular issue. Now, but we can kind of look at this from another perspective too, that if it succeeds, right, which we all hope that it succeeds, this would justify David Zaslav's gamble on DC as the studio's cornerstone. No longer is it Warner Brothers Studios, right? The movie, like Warner Brothers Pictures, as being the cornerstone of the Warner Brothers Discovery brand. It's DC Studios. That is now the cornerstone. They are putting all their eggs in the Man of Steel, the last son of Krypton's basket. And that, my friends, is where things are going to get into a little bit of a shaky ground. Okay, so the stakes for Gunn and Safran are pretty high too. Their credibility as leaders of DC Studios do rest on this film's performance. Creature Commandos, I loved it. It was kind of middle of the road for some people. You've got the upcoming Supergirl, which Millie Alcock, I'm curious to see how she does. Jason Momoa as Lobo is going to be probably the biggest draw for people. But again, you got that and you got the Lantern show that's filming right now with a great cast of characters. And I think that should be pretty interesting as well. But also, why isn't Green Lantern coming to theaters? I just find that to be kind of weird. But if Superman succeeds, this will then allow Gunn and Safran to maintain control. If it flops, it's entirely probable that Zaslav will restructure DC Studios, or Warner Brothers could be pushed towards selling assets or merging. Now, we've talked about that before. Remember when he bought the franchise back in 2022, when he bought Warner Brothers Discovery, when they broke it off from AT&T, we had talked about the fact that he just wanted to bolster Discovery and then sell it off in 2025 or 2026 whenever that became something that he could do. And we're coming up on that time right now. And Superman is, again, the linchpin of that. That is either going to bring enough money into the studio to warrant its existence, or it's going to fail and Zaslav is going to do what we all knew he was going to do at some point in time, which is cut and fucking run. Sell off Warner Brothers and all their assets, maybe individually, who knows, and then take out his Discovery and then go from there. That's what we generally figured that's what he's going to do. And again, this is also mounting pressure from the other films that Warner Brothers has put out that have kind of failed to do, great in the box office, like Mickey 17, Joker Folie à Deux, The Bride. They have failed their test screenings or struggled financially. And this has caused a massive concern for Pam Abdy and Mike DeLuca. The last major hit that Dune has, that Warner Brothers had, was Dune Part 2, that came out a fucking year ago. It came out a year ago. That was their last big hit. So they're hoping that Superman is going to be the Barbie of 2025, which it's not. It's just no way. It's just not going to happen. Okay, we have to remember here, we have to look at this big picture. Okay, we have to look at this big picture. Warner Brothers has always been a pillar of Hollywood. Okay, it's one of the mains. But recent financial struggles, leadership problems, and risky projects have weakened its position. HBO Max, or Max is the dumbest name ever, has grown in subscribers, which is good. But at the same time, it ain't knocking socks off. According to this report, if Warner Brothers can't make DC work, its long-term future as a standalone studio is in jeopardy. Who will buy Warner Brothers? My money is on Apple or potentially Comcast, because Universal could easily take in those properties and make it work. Right now, Superman is that strategy. Everything rests on Superman. That sounds hyperbolic to say. In some ways it is. But it's also the truth of what's going on here. And James Gunn has got to knock it out of the damn park. And if he doesn't do that, it's game over, man. Game over. As always, I'm curious to know your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know. We'll talk more about it tonight. If you want to get more in-depth, thoughtful analysis from me on movies, head on over to Podio Commentary. I just talked about Sleepaway Camp. And then tomorrow is Sleepaway Camp 2. And on Friday is Sleepaway Camp 3. And then on Monday, unfortunately, is Sleepaway Camp 4. That's it. If you've seen it, you know. But otherwise, I always like talking movies. I'll talk to you guys tonight on the live show. Have a great one. Peace out.